Welcome to the Economy Magazine at I-24 News, where we provide a daily view on the world markets and the global economy. Coming up, the Israeli presence at Dublin, Ireland's Web Summit, quite notable this year. Dozens of Israel-based startups attended the three-day event of pitches, parties, and networking. And the Israeli Prime Minister is asking Washington for more military aid, hoping the U.S. president will up the previous package of $3.1 billion. Let's start now with the headlines. Well, worse than expected trade data from China over the weekend, a significant blow for the regional Asian bourses on Monday, but the key exchanges did manage to shrug off the alarm. Tokyo and Shanghai stocks moved to the upside. Japan's Nikkei jumped almost 2%. China's Shanghai up 1.6%. The Hang Seng slid 0.61%. Meanwhile, European equities opened lower after the China export figures. By the afternoon, London's FTSE slid 0.06%, Germany's DAX down 0.23%, and France's CAC also lower 0.44%. U.S. markets seem to be pointing for a slightly higher open. U.S. President Barack Obama rejected the Keystone oil pipeline from Canada on Friday, a victory for environmentalists who campaigned heavily against the proposal for more than 7 years. Obama said the project wouldn't make a meaningful long-term economic contribution or significantly cut gas prices for drivers. Also, he said that it wouldn't bolster U.S. energy security. Rather, the president urged U.S. Congress to focus on infrastructure instead. Meanwhile, in Canada's oil-rich province, Alberta, the premier said that the U.S. rejection of Keystone underscored the need now for greener policies in Canada.
America is now a global leader when it comes to taking serious action to fight climate change. And frankly, approving this project would have undercut that global leadership.
I am disappointed by the way the U.S. government chose to characterize our energy exports.
IMF head Christine Lagarde warned Sunday that global energy prices could remain low for years, urging Gulf countries now to adjust their budgets. After meeting with the officials from the Six-Nation Gulf Cooperation Council in Doha, Qatar, Lagarde cautioned that Gulf nations could no longer rely on revenues from oil and gas. She said the IMF expects growth there across that part of the world would fall from 3.2% this year to 2.7% till 2016. The price of oil has already declined by more than half since the start of 2014.
We believe that the price of oil will probably persist at the levels where it is for a number of years, and that as a result, all GCC countries should undertake some degree of fiscal adjustment.
British Prime Minister David Cameron says he could back a British exit from the European Union once a referendum is held before the end of 2017. The British leader wants to reform his country's ties with the EU and, in a letter published on Tuesday, is set to outline his demands now for renegotiating Britain's EU membership. Cameron emphasized the importance of flexibility on part of the EU to convince the British people to stay in Europe.
In a way, you can boil down all of my negotiation to one word: flexibility. Is this organisation flexible enough to make sure that countries inside the Eurozone can grow and succeed, and countries outside the Eurozone, like Britain, can find what they need as well?
The UAE Air Force announced Monday a $1.3 billion deal with Swedish defense giant Saab to purchase 2 surveillance planes and upgrade 2 others. The 2 new aircraft are Global 6000 surveillance planes, while the old planes to be upgraded are part of the UAE's fleet of Saab 340s. This is according to a UAE military general at the Dubai Air Show. Well, the date of delivery has not been finalized, but it could be within 2 years. According to the general, the purchase supports surveillance capabilities of the Gulf nation's Air Force.
The purchase supports surveillance capabilities of the UAE's Air Force. It's a very important deal, and it is part of the Air Force's strategy to develop its capabilities.
Myanmar's opposition National League for Democracy Party landed a sweeping victory on Sunday, marking the country's first general election in 25 years. A spokesman for the party said it had won more than 90% of the votes counted so far in the central regions. Despite the NLD's potential victory, its Nobel laureate holding leader, Suu Kyi, is prevented from being nominated there for president, as both her sons are British citizens. The current constitution bars anyone with close foreign-born relatives from becoming president. A final vote count will be announced on Tuesday at the very earliest. And the mayor of London visited Israel in an effort now to strengthen ties with Jerusalem and promote tech investment in his home city. Kicking off a 3-day mission to Israel and the Palestinian territories, London's mayor met with his Tel Aviv counterpart, Ron Huladi, and advocated for greater economic partnership between the city's business leaders, investors, and politicians. With just a 2-hour time difference to London, the mayor believes that the capital is in prime position to build on links that saw more Israeli firms go public on the London Stock Exchange last year than from any other country outside the UK. Well, Europe's biggest tech conference concluded last week in Dublin, Ireland, with a significant Israeli presence. Now, we spoke to a handful of startup founders on why they decided to attend. We even found that the planes were full with Israelis returning from this 3-day event. Web Summit, where the tech world meets. Over 40,000 attendees from 134 countries. 3 days of learning, networking, and socializing in Europe's tech heartland, Dublin. This year, a long list of Israeli entrepreneurs arrived to this international tech playground. From Hear Me Out, Safe Beyond, TimeNote, Area Snap, Candle Touch, and Coding Ninjas.
There are literally dozens of Israeli startups at the Web Summit this year. We've had Waze come in the past, and they've been amazing. Tabuya and Take, some incredible startups. Israel is a fantastic country for tech, and I guess it's one that we in Ireland always want to emulate.
One of the most popular Israeli startups at the summit, MoveIt. The company's CEO moderated 3 panel discussions, highlighting the creation of smart cities through communities. He also emphasized the importance of passion in a global workforce.
Find people that are passionate about what your business is all about. So once they were passionate about public transit, they helped us in any way they could to promote our business in their own country.
Aside from talking business, a good portion are also doing business.
We found some opportunities worldwide, some really interesting investors, and yeah, actually it's a pretty amazing event.
Well, it's a win-win here for a lot of Israeli startups. They get to mingle here with some of the biggest tech influencers from across the globe. And they don't have to get past the usual gatekeepers. After all, it is a cheaper plane ride than to San Francisco.
I'm not surprised because Ireland is the English hub for American companies, so LinkedIn, Facebook are here, so of course Israelis are going to be here as well. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived in Washington again, asking for more cash from the U.S. President Barack Obama. Daniel Roth has this story.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington to meet with U.S. President Barack Obama for their first face-to-face encounter in over a year. The Israeli Prime Minister is, among other topics, making a plea to up the amount of U.S. military aid from the previous long-term package of an annual $3.1 billion to $5 billion a year starting in 2017 and lasting for a decade.
I believe that this meeting is important in order to make clear the continuation of trajectory of American aid for Israel in the coming decade, and will be an additional step in consolidating understanding on this matter.
U.S. government sources have said that the issue is not on the table at the meeting, according to a New York Times report, though previous reports stated that Israel can expect a new deal that will not meet their requested military aid amount, but will be higher than the current sum. The U.S.-Israel relationship has been strained over recent months because of the Prime Minister's outspoken opposition to the Iranian nuclear deal, and more recently over comments about the U.S. President and Secretary of State made by the Prime Minister's new media advisor. The current $3.1 billion in aid is double the next largest recipient, Israel's neighbor Egypt. The Israeli case for beefing up the package has been centered on ongoing instability in the region throughout Syria and IS-controlled territories, as well as a so-called consolation prize after being disappointed by the Iran deal.
Anyhow, it's going to be the characteristic of the Middle East for the years to come. Chronic instability, not just in Syria, for a very, very long period of time. And I'm not sure for how long.
Reports suggest that Israel is looking to gain a plethora of advanced weaponry, including additional F-15s on top of the F-35s already promised, as well as V-22 Osprey aircraft helicopters and GBU-28 laser-guided bombs that could ostensibly be used to bust through underground Iranian nuclear facilities. U.S. military aid in this package is in addition to other aid provided for programs such as Israel's successful Iron Dome missile defense system, into which the U.S. has already put hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, for more analysis, we have Owen Alterman, the research fellow at the INSS. Thanks very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Well, as we both know, this meeting is yet to happen, and so we're filming this just ahead of this. But what do you expect to be the focus?
There are a number of issues on the table. One important issue is a memorandum of understanding for defense aid for Israel for the next 10 years. Another issue will be confidence-building measures that the administration has asked Prime Minister Netanyahu to provide on the Palestinian track. And of course, they'll be talking about other issues in the Middle East and instability referred to in the package and to the Iran deal.
All right. Well, a key component of this request is to up the volume of the cash here. Do you expect that to go through?
Expectations ahead of the meeting are that there will be an increase. It may not be as much as Israel is asking for, but in any negotiation, a party will stake out a position, not necessarily expecting it to be fully honored, but that is the expectation leading up to the meeting, that there will be some kind of increase, not as much as Israel is asking for.
All right. Do you think that this perhaps is a consolation for the Iran deal in any way?
No question. But it's not just a matter of consolation. President Obama does want to be seen as pro-Israel and does want and made this promise to Democrats who supported him on the Iran deal. So it's not just about his relationship with Israel or with Benjamin Netanyahu. It's about his relationship with members of Congress from his own party. So it's something he'll want to deliver on.
Okay, well, that's an interesting point here. Do you think that there's any hope that he can actually improve his ties with Netanyahu, and does he really care?
Well, the personal relationship will be hard to repair. That one's been pretty tarnished over the past few years. But a working relationship between the two countries that can be improved, and it's hard to see it getting much worse than it was over the summer. Hopefully we've hit a nadir and these two parties can get things back on track. And then, of course, in 14 months, Netanyahu, assuming he's still prime minister, will have a new American president to be dealing with.
All right. Well, how much pressure do you think the U.S. president will place on Netanyahu in his receiving more money here on the Palestinian issue?
There is some kind of linkage between the two, even though, as I said, Obama will want to deliver on the military package. He's always said he supports Israeli security, and this really is about hard power and hard security, and it's something he'll want to deliver on. But there's no secret, and the administration has made no secret of its frustration with the lack of progress on the Palestinian track and wants to see action from Israel and wants to hear ideas from Netanyahu. So there will be some pressure on that.
I see. And do you think that Netanyahu will listen?
He's listening. He says he's coming to Washington with ideas that, by the way, have generated some opposition from Bayit Yehudi and from some of the parties within the coalition. But all signs are that Netanyahu will go ahead and bring these ideas to the meeting. They won't necessarily include a freeze and settlement building, which is something the administration would very much have liked to have seen. But they may include other things that might be meaningful. Or at least start a discussion.
Can you anticipate what those things could be?
Well, there have been reports about improvement to movement and access for Palestinians in the West Bank, to lifting some barriers to development in areas of the West Bank that Israel controls, Area C as it's known, and other issues that can help the Palestinians' quality of life, not necessarily getting us to a final status agreement, but even by the administration's own admission, that isn't realistic in the foreseeable future or in the near term.
All right. Well, let's talk about the region a bit. And Moshe Yaalon, the defense minister, did point out that ISIS is a threat here to the whole region. And clearly, this seems like it's a factor here in delivering an up in aid, right?
That's part of it, but don't forget a bigger moving factor here is the Iran deal.
Okay.
Iran's assets of $50 to $100 billion are being unfrozen in the West, and that will give Iran money that it can spend, among other things, on weapons. We've already seen reports today of Iran potentially getting the S-300 air missile defense system from Russia. And if that happens, that's long been viewed by Israeli leaders as a potential game changer in changing the balance of military power in the region, and that is actually potentially behind one of the specific requests from Israel in the military aid to increase the delivery of F-35 fighter planes from the United States. Those are the only planes, according to press reports, that can successfully deal with this S-300 system. So it's really Iran that's the major factor, much less so than the Islamic State.
Interesting point there. Also, let's talk about the strategic partnership, though, that we have between the U.S. and Israel. What are the reasons that the U.S. even wants to support Israel?
Well, this is a relationship that goes back decades, and there's a certain amount of tradition to it, and there's a large domestic politics factor in it in the United States. But Israel is a loyal American ally in the region, and the United States even if this administration has said that it doesn't mind seeing daylight between its positions and Israel's, does want to maintain a kind of balance of power in the region, and that includes ties with Israel and an alliance with Israel. So it will want to preserve the alliance and preserve Israel's qualitative military edge, even if it may not be willing to take Israel's position or agree with Prime Minister Netanyahu on every issue.
All right, last word.
Sure. We'll have to see. By the time viewers see this, we may know what the results of the meeting are, and we'll start to hear reports about them. But I hope for, and we'll probably see a more friendly tone than we've seen in past meetings, and hopefully that can lead to the relationship improving over the medium term.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us. Very much appreciate all your insight on this upcoming meeting. We very much look forward to the news on that. Well, that does wrap up our show today. Stay tuned here every day for all your global business and tech and economic coverage. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Thanks very much for watching. And also be sure to follow us on our website. It's i24news.tv. We also have pages for you in French, Arabic, and English. And be sure to check out our Facebook and Twitter as well. Thanks for watching.